Welcome to Conversations with CASA, a series exploring issues and trends in child welfare. My name is Vicki Spriggs. I'm the CEO of Texas CASA. We're filming in our office here in Austin, and today's guest is Jenny Haynes. Jenny serves as Texas CASA's board president-elect and has been a member of our board for 6 years. Jenny is a retired professional in public relations and communications with 35 years of fundraising, marketing, communications, and governmental affairs experience. Jenny has been a CASA volunteer in Collin County since 2008 and a chair of the CASA of Collin County Legislative Advocacy Team. She's been a very actively engaged member of the Texas CASA board. And so today, we welcome you, Jenny.
Thanks a lot, Vicki. It's good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. As the president-elect of our board, what is your vision for CASA?
When a child comes into the child protective system, as far as I'm concerned, they're everybody's child. They are children of the state of Texas. And I want everybody in the state to feel like those are my kids, whether or not, and treat them like they're your grandkids or your nieces and nephews or your children. And that's what my vision is for people to really have compassion for those kids. And from Texas CASA's perspective, that means allowing us to do legislative things, working with the legislature and the policy providers here in the state to do things that are beneficial to those kids and to make sure that those kids have a safe environment while they're in the child protective system. They're our kids. We got to treat them better.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that's why we're so excited about your tenure. You've done a lot, not only for Texas CASA, but on behalf of national advocacy as well during your term on the board. Can you talk about some of your successes or some of your experiences on the board to date?
This has been a wonderful board. This has been a wonderful experience. I've been on different nonprofit boards for, gosh, it made me feel horrible that you said I've been in business or been in communications for 35 years. It kind of hits you in the face. But so I've been on boards for many, many years. And this board is just very, very special to me. And what we're doing is very, very special. One of the things that has been most important to me is that about 3 years ago, the board put a stake in the ground and said every child should have a CASA. And we've really worked toward that. One of the most important things in getting that done is we have initiated a communications program across the state, TV, radio, billboards, whatnot, to increase the number of volunteers we have, because that's what it takes. You've got to have more volunteers to serve more kids. And I think that's been one of the most important things that we've done since I've been on the board, and I'm really excited about that. We've come a long way. This communications program has been going on for about 3 years, the first year in a pilot program, and we're serving about 56% of the kids. We've still got a long way to go, but we've come a long way since we started this program.
And I think you're selling yourself a little short in this regard because you've been the chair of the committee that's been spearheading this effort.
Well, it was a great honor to be able to do that and to work with the staff to put together this program and to really test it out in pilot programs to make sure we're doing the right things. And some things we were doing, we tossed out and said it's not working. But we're really happy with what we've been doing.
Thank you. Now, I also know that National CASA calls on you from time to time. Can you talk about that experience or those experiences?
Well, it's been really interesting to get involved because I didn't realize until I got involved in National CASA how different the CASA programs are around the country. And so it's been great personally for me to see that difference in the various states. Texas, by far, I will tell you, whenever I've been at state meetings, people will often turn to me and say, well, what's CASA doing in Texas on this particular item? Or let's look to Texas, and can Texas help us on this? And I know that people in other states contact the Texas CASA staff to say, how do you do this? Or give us some ideas about that. And that's just so exciting. And I've been able to go to Washington for the national organization several times and talk to legislators, congressmen, senators there to promote CASA, and they're so receptive. They're so receptive.
They really are.
Yeah.
Especially with the energy and passion with which you deliver the message, because you come in so well informed. You do your homework, and then you, from experience, are able to articulate the message. And I think that's why we find you so valuable, and why National CASA finds you so valuable as well. So
Well, you're
thank
so
you
sweet
for
to say that. I will never forget the meeting that we were having in Kay Granger's office. Kay Granger is a representative in the Fort Worth area of Texas, with her and her staff. And I was in that office, and we were telling stories about CASA, and Kay Granger is very interested in CASA and has been very supportive. In fact, even came and sat in a courthouse while CASA cases were being heard. She was that interested about it. But anyway, we were sitting in her offices, and I was relating stories like any CASA does, any volunteer CASA does, as they're talking to whoever, not divulging any kids' names or anything, but just telling our experiences. And by the time we were done, everybody in the room was crying. And as I walked out, one of the staff aides said, "I've never been in a meeting before where everybody cried when we were doing our work." But it's such a compelling story, and CASA is just a wonderful organization, and what we do is great. And the volunteers obviously make it happen, and it's been a great experience. And one of the great things, too, is because of the legislative work that we do in Texas with the Texas legislature, some of those staff people and some of those elected officers have, quote unquote, graduated to Washington. And you go in there and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I remember you're telling us this story," or CASA telling us this story in Texas. And so we're really educating people who go to Washington right here in our own backyard.
So what are some of the challenges you see coming down the road?
Well, I think there's two that I really look at. Number one is people. Getting more volunteers. We've got to do that, and we're working toward that. But that's always a constant thing we've got to be worried about and looking at. Not only volunteers, but also staff. Not only for Texas CASA, but for the local programs. They need great staff. They need good training. We're doing a good job on all that. But it's all about the people as to whether or not the CASA programs and the CASA network works well across the state. So that's always a challenge, I think. And the other thing we always have to worry about is funding. We've got programs, CASA programs around the state, all over the state, and it's their volunteers who are doing the work. There is no way that a state organization can afford to do what we do as a volunteer organization. And yet we do rely on both private funds as well as government funds to do our work. And so the funding is obviously always an issue and something you have to keep your eye on. But there is no way that these kids can be helped like we help them, like our volunteers help them. There's just not another way that the government could possibly do what we do.
That's for sure. I think people who are introduced to CASA begin to understand that everyone else involved in the CASA world, guardian ad litems, attorney ad litems, caseworkers, whoever, carries a caseload. Whereas the CASA volunteer is that volunteer and that child or sibling set generally. And so that level of attention just can't be duplicated. And I think the part about funding as well hits a very real point, because people don't understand why a volunteer program needs money. But what they fail to understand, or what they begin to understand, is the training, the background investigations, the level of support, quality support that you want to give volunteers to make sure they're able to do their best requires funding, because you have to be able to bring in the staff that can provide that level of service.
I was a volunteer for CASA Child for many years. He's 20 years old right now. I'm still in contact with him. He aged out of the system. He was my CASA kid from about 2008 through a couple of years ago. And I still am in contact with him, and there's not a time I talk to him, and we talk about once a month, that he doesn't talk about what a difference having a CASA made. It didn't take very much. It just takes being there. I've got another friend who is a CASA volunteer who just told me recently he got a call from one of the kids that he had been a volunteer for, and she said, "I want you to give me away at my wedding." It's just touching.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much.
Yep. Thank you. Don't make me sit here and start crying. That's not what we brought you here for.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.